At the quarterly awards ceremony, my team lead handed me a participation trophy and mocked, "Here you go, princess, for showing up and not completely screwing things up." As the crowd chuckled, I smiled and bowed. What they didn't know was that I had just accepted a position with our biggest competitor, and had scheduled my resignation to hit his inbox right before his biggest presentation yet. Let me take you back to the night that changed everything for me. It was a Thursday. We were at one of those company-sponsored quarterly award dinners in downtown Kansas City. Fancy place, hotel ballroom, fake crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, an open bar that made everyone act a little looser than usual. The kind of event meant to celebrate people's hard work, but mostly just ended up kissing ass to the same 5 people every quarter. I work in sales for a logistics software company. Had been there 5 years. I wasn't a superstar, but I always hit my numbers. I trained new hires, handled client fires, picked up the slack when people quit. My reviews were always good, just not loud. I wasn't flashy. I showed up, did my job, didn't complain. I thought that was enough. It wasn't. Not at this place. Not under Brad. Brad was my team lead. The guy's a walking LinkedIn post. Wore too much cologne, made himself the star of every conversation, and always managed to find a way to make you feel small with a smile on his face. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just made jokes that dug into your ribs and stayed there. I once saw him introduce a new intern by saying, "This is Jake. Let's hope he lasts longer than the last 3." He laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world, and the poor kid just stood there, shrinking into his shoes. That's how Brad worked, always loud enough for the room to hear, always pretending it was all in fun. Back to the ceremony. Everyone was seated, drinks flowing, music playing low in the background. A bunch of us were at this big round table near the front. I already knew I wasn't getting any kind of award. I didn't care. I was just there for the food, to be honest. Brad got up to present the sales team recognitions. He handed out a few awards: Top Closer, Client Whisperer, Most New Accounts. His favorites, of course. People clapped, took photos. The usual. Then he cleared his throat and grinned, looking directly at me. "And now," he said, holding up a tiny, cheap plastic trophy with glitter on it, "a special recognition for someone who managed to survive the quarter without causing a disaster. A real milestone." People chuckled. He walked over to me and said, "Here you go, princess, for showing up and not completely screwing things up." Laughter rolled through the room. Some people at my table laughed, others didn't. A few looked at me and winced. But nobody said anything. Not one person. I took the trophy. I smiled. I stood up and did a little dramatic bow. More laughter. Brad grinned like he just won the night. But what nobody knew, what not a single person in that room knew, was that I had already accepted a job offer 2 weeks ago. I had signed a contract with our biggest competitor. A bigger title, way better pay, full remote, actual respect. They wanted someone who knew the logistics software space inside and out, and I fit the bill. During the interview process, I hinted that I was looking for a new home because of a toxic team culture. That phrase caught their attention real fast. So I waited. I waited for a moment that would justify the kind of exit I was planning. And Brad gave it to me. I went home that night, opened my laptop, and scheduled my resignation email to go out the next morning at 8:55 a.m. Brad had a massive pitch at 9 a.m. with a huge Chicago-based client. A medical supply chain company that could have added $6 million in yearly revenue. He'd been prepping for it for weeks. It was all he talked about. What he didn't know was that I had been the one quietly feeding that lead, warming them up, walking them through early demos, answering their long-winded follow-up emails. Brad didn't even know half their names. I had done all the legwork, and he was planning to swoop in last minute and take all the credit. So I wrote my email. I kept it short, polite, and ice cold. I thanked the company for the opportunities. I explained I'd accepted another role with a competing firm. I mentioned, specifically, that the awards ceremony made it clear how I was viewed, not as a team member, but as a punchline. I copied HR. I copied the regional director. I copied the VP of sales. And I attached all my client notes, handoff materials, and final updates. I also made it clear I wouldn't be attending the pitch. That morning, I sat at my new desk at home, wearing a hoodie, sipping coffee, while Slack started exploding with messages I ignored. I was officially gone. But Brad's show? That was just beginning. At 9:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a missed call from Brad. Then another. Then 3 texts. Are you serious? You couldn't have waited one day? This is completely unprofessional. I didn't answer. I didn't even open them. I just turned my phone over and went back to sipping my coffee. But I imagined what was happening in that conference room. Brad sitting at the long glass table, sweating in his fitted suit, trying to smile through clenched teeth. The Chicago client staring at him, wondering why the person they'd been talking to for weeks was suddenly gone. Probably asking questions he didn't know the answers to. Probably watching him fumble. He wasn't just unprepared, he was exposed. By 10 a.m., I got another text. Not from Brad this time. This one was from Tasha, someone I used to work with, one of the few decent people on that team. We had lunch a few times, she vented about the same crap I did, but she always played it safe. Her message just said, "Dude. You have no idea what you just did." Apparently, the meeting had gone off the rails. Brad had tried to BS his way through the pitch, but the clients weren't having it. One of them, some VP from Chicago, called him out halfway through and asked why I wasn't there. Brad stammered something about restructuring, but they didn't buy it. One of them flat out asked, "Was she fired?" Brad said no. Then the client asked why the lead contact quit that morning. The room went dead silent, according to Tasha. Then the client said they were reevaluating and walked out 10 minutes later. That pitch? Dead. Millions lost. Later that afternoon, I got a message on LinkedIn from the Chicago client's operations director. All it said was, "Heard you landed at new company. Let's talk next week." That's when it hit me, this wasn't just payback. This was leverage. But I wasn't done yet. Brad wasn't just bad to me. He treated the whole team like crap. I'd seen people cry after meetings. I'd seen him take credit for deals I knew others closed. HR never did anything, because Brad kept his bullying just under the radar. Too slick. Too subtle. Nobody ever had proof. Except now I did. I had 5 years' worth of emails. Notes. Slack messages. Petty little comments disguised as feedback. Some even included HR in the threads, showing how they brushed things off or ignored complaints. I started collecting. Printing PDFs, saving screenshots. Highlighting patterns. My new company didn't ask me to do this. But when their legal team asked, casually, if I had insight into Brad's leadership style and the inner workings of my old team, I told them I'd get them something better than notes. Truth was, they were bidding on 2 other contracts that my old company was also chasing. And Brad was leading both of those bids. My new company? They were about to be handed the keys to the castle. And I was the one unlocking the door. I hadn't planned for this to go beyond that morning. But watching how fast the dominoes started falling, I realized something: this wasn't revenge. This was justice. And Brad had no idea how much further I was willing to go. By Monday, things had gone from bad to worse for Brad. Word started spreading inside my old company. Quiet at first, just whispers among the sales staff, side texts, Slack DMs. But it didn't stay quiet for long. A few people reached out to me privately, just like Tasha had, and they all said the same thing: Brad's freaking out. Apparently, upper management wasn't happy. That Chicago client? They'd filed a formal complaint. Said Brad misrepresented the team and that my sudden departure showed a lack of transparency and internal instability. Their words, not mine. It was the kind of language that made executives nervous. But the real twist came on Wednesday. I got another text from Tasha. Did you see the email? I hadn't. But she forwarded it to me. A mass message from the director of sales to the whole department. Polite, corporate, full of buzzwords. We're initiating an internal review of team leadership practices to ensure a more supportive and professional work environment. Translation: Brad was under investigation. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 2 days later, I get an anonymous email from someone with a burner Gmail account. No name. No subject. Just a file attachment and a sentence. You're not the only one he did this to. I scanned the file. It was a long, detailed report. Screenshots of Slack convos. Meeting transcripts. Even HR emails. It was a full complaint someone had written up over a year ago and never submitted, because they were too afraid of backlash. But now? They were giving it to me. That's when I realized, Brad had burned more bridges than he could count. So I did something bold. I compiled everything. Every old message, every comment, every piece of garbage feedback that was really just him tearing people down. I even found a Slack convo where he joked about firing someone just to light a fire under the team. I packaged it all into a PDF. And I sent it to HR. I didn't just send it anonymously. I signed my name. A few hours later, I got a LinkedIn message from one of the execs at my old company, the VP of Strategy. A guy I'd only spoken to once or twice. He said, "Thanks for sending that. I can't say much, but you did the right thing." That same week, one of my former coworkers, Melissa, who used to sit 2 desks over from me, reached out to let me know that HR had started pulling people into private feedback sessions. People who had never been asked before. People Brad used to walk all over. The company was unraveling the whole damn thing. But even that wasn't the wildest part. Because while all of this was happening, Brad was trying to save himself. I know this because someone from IT, someone I'd helped once with a busted laptop, someone who owed me, told me Brad had been caught digging through my old files on the company drive. Trying to find something, anything, he could use to blame me for the failed pitch. Anything to make it look like I sabotaged the deal on purpose. He downloaded a few folders, even flagged a file that he tried to send to the director, claiming I'd mismanaged communication with the client. But it backfired. Because that file? It had a timestamp. And it showed I'd updated the handoff notes before I quit. I had done my job. Documented everything. Clean. Professional. Brad got caught trying to twist the truth. HR put him on administrative leave by the following Monday. But there was still one more card to play. And this time it wouldn't come from me. That last card? It came from someone none of us expected, Brad's own boss, Rachel, the regional director. The woman who usually defended him behind closed doors. The one who always backed his decisions, no matter how many people he ran over. Turns out, Brad had pissed off too many people for too long. And now, with the failed pitch, the formal complaint from the Chicago client, and all the dirt people were finally brave enough to share, Rachel had to make a choice: protect Brad, or protect herself. She chose herself. I found out what happened in pieces. Tasha filled me in on the first part. HR had called Brad in for what was supposed to be a routine follow-up. But it wasn't. When he walked into the conference room, Rachel was already there. So was someone from legal. They didn't waste time. He was told he was being terminated for unprofessional conduct, hostile work environment, and breach of internal trust. They had a folder of documents in front of him. My complaint. Others. Screenshots. Audio clips. I wasn't the only one who had recorded his jokes. Some people had been collecting receipts for months, just in case. But the part that really hit? He was walked out. Middle of the day. No warning. No exit speech. Just a quiet shuffle past the open-floor cubicles with 2 people from HR following behind him. Gone. Just like that. That would have been enough for most people. But then I got one last message. From Melissa. She told me something that made my stomach twist. Something I didn't know, because I hadn't stuck around long enough to see it. Back in January, during a slow quarter, Brad had quietly blocked my name from being submitted for a retention bonus. A few other reps got theirs. I didn't. At the time, I thought maybe I just didn't qualify. But no, Brad had told HR that I didn't want it. Said I preferred to keep things simple. It was $5,000. Gone. He stole it. And that was the part that broke me a little. Not the money. Not really. But the way he used silence to screw me over. The way he grinned at me in meetings, knowing damn well what he'd done. The way he humiliated me at that ceremony like it was some kind of harmless prank. I told myself I didn't care. That I was fine. That I'd moved on. But the truth? I'd spent years staying quiet. Trying to be the bigger person. Letting things slide. And when I smiled and bowed and took that stupid little trophy, I finally realized something. Being the bigger person only works when the other side is human. Brad wasn't. He was a parasite in a tailored suit. But now? Now, he's unemployed. Blacklisted. Everyone in our industry knows what happened. I've already gotten 2 messages from recruiters asking if I knew the guy who got fired mid-project for harassment. I just said, yeah. I knew him. As for me? I'm thriving at the new job. They treat me with respect. They listen. And that Chicago client? They moved forward with us. They asked to keep me as their direct contact. Said they liked my style. I won't lie. Sometimes I still feel bitter. I think about all the time I lost trying to prove myself to someone who never saw me as anything but a stepping stone. But I also think about that moment when he stood on stage, holding up that cheap trophy, thinking he was on top of the world. And how the next morning, his empire started to crack. It wasn't fast. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't a single explosion. It was quiet. Strategic. Precise. The same way I worked all those years. And it brought him down. So yeah, Brad gave me a participation trophy. But in the end? I gave him something he'll never forget, consequences. Real ones. The kind that don't come with applause. Just silence. And a closed door.